Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch joins me in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk tariffs then. Do you think this is all down to Starmer, us getting 10% and not 20% like the EU, or is Brexit responsible for this?
Of course it's Brexit.
Oh,
of course
it's
because
superior negotiating
we left the European Union. This was one of the benefits. We now have an independent trade policy, but we need to use it. Many people want to just dynamically align with the EU. That's what Starmer wants to do, just copy what they're doing. That's lazy. And the fact is, it's the decisions that he's made that have put us in a worse position. We would be able to handle all of this turbulence better if they hadn't put up taxes, if they hadn't driven up inflation and driven down growth, which is now just 1%.
Although he did ask you a pretty good question at PMQs on Wednesday. He said to you, well, why didn't the Tories deliver a free trade agreement? You were trade secretary. Why didn't you influence things?
Because President Biden said he wasn't doing any free trade agreements. So the negotiations that we carried out were with President Trump. And his trade representative was in the room. He's back now. So they should pick up where we left off. We'd had good gains in the negotiations, but they now need to make sure that what they negotiate isn't just giving stuff up to get what we had last week.
But why
They've got
didn't
to get
it come
new
off
things.
in his first term? You just run out of time.
We didn't leave the EU until January 2020. So he was gone before before there was time to conclude. But we'd actually gone a significant part of the way. But, they've lost our best trade negotiator. They don't know what they're doing. And, just today, Keir Starmer is saying globalization is over and we should focus more on the domestic. If so, why is he closing oil and gas fields in the North Sea? That's not serious.
When we talk about this trade deal, a lot's been said about, we're going to have to try and water down the digital services tax and maybe we need to water down the online safety bill. And these are all of the concessions we're going to have to be making to the tech bros in America. I mean, you're a realist. You appreciate that that's going to be part of the quid pro quo.
It doesn't have to be. That's not how trade negotiations work. We cannot give stuff away just to lower the tariffs. That's just putting us back where we were last week with even less.
We've got to give something, though, haven't we? I mean, the art of the deal. Donald Trump isn't going to accept a trade deal only on the UK's terms. That would be preposterous.
No, but it wouldn't only be on the UK's terms. Let's look at what the two sectors are asking for. The best trade deals are the ones where businesses from both countries come together. We used to have, the British-American alliance and all of those sorts of investors. They would say this is how it could work for both countries. If you allow unions to negotiate the way Labour does, then yes, you're going to get something terrible. But this is what worries me, that we have a government that doesn't know what it's doing, that's making bad decisions. Look at what they've done on Chagos. Look at what they've done with the family farms tax. Look at what they've done on winter fuel. Now today, they're reversing this zero electric vehicles mandate, which we had done previously. They messed everybody around, told people we were climate change deniers, scrapped it. Now they've seen that actually their net zero plans don't make sense.
Darren Jones is being a bit equivocal about that. I don't know I don't know what's happening next week. He might come up with an industrial strategy. What are you saying on the whole car industry problem? Because obviously we've got Jaguar Land Rover now temporarily suspending sales to the US.
Because of course we didn't get a reprieve on car tariffs.
No.
We didn't get a reprieve on that.
25%.
Exactly.
The car industry's on its knees. Vauxhall's plant closed down a couple of weeks ago. We've done it on the show. We've had people from manufacturing coming in saying we are having an absolute nightmare. You've obviously come forward with that scrapping of the net zero by 2050 pledge. What are you saying about EVs and how should the car industry be supported through this abject crisis?
Well, let's look at what we did 2 years ago. All the car companies were telling me that this is not going to work unless the government pays a lot of money, a lot of subsidies. People didn't want to buy electric cars. They're very heavy on the roads. It's one of the reasons why we're getting more potholes, for example. So we need to create policies that make sense. Can people afford this? Where are the components coming from? Not just relying on China, which is partly what President Trump is trying to do. This trade war is really about China. The rest of us are in the way and are feeling the brunt of it. But another thing that we can do is start working with the other partners. We had the biggest post-Brexit trade deal, CPTPP, those 12 countries, Japan, Australia, Mexico, Canada. They're all feeling the brunt as well. We should be working with them. Let's try and lower some other tariffs. Let's do more where we have influence, as we do with the EU, rather than just sitting back and looking for more things to give away to the US. That's not the right way to do it.
Also, though, aren't we going to be worried that we are now going to be flooded with even more Chinese goods? I mean, you speak to somebody like James Dyson, he says the Chinese don't have any respect for intellectual property. They're just going to knock off my vacuum cleaner or my air dryer or whatever. And that's just the way the Chinese operate. They don't have any respect for any laws and
That's where we should be focusing on. The people who don't play by the rules. Rather than throwing all the rules away, let's make sure that those who don't play by the rules are made accountable. That's where you use tariffs. That's what they're there for. WTO rules are about people who are dumping goods, over-subsidizing, unfair competition. That's what tariffs should be used for.
How about this whole idea of a no free trade deal without freedom of speech? You've spoken up in favour of the anti-abortionist Livia Tosiki-Bolt. She's obviously been found guilty last week of infringing an area, a no-go zone, with her kind of silent prayer. Where do we go from here on that? I'm also going to ask you about Lucy Connolly in a moment, but on the anti-abortionists first of all.
So we have to make sure that we don't say what is not going on. We do have free speech in this country. It is under threat. In some ways. You look at the story of that poor nurse who's been suspended, I hear, for calling a paedophile a man while she was being racially abused. That is a big problem. I am certain she's going to win her case, as will the Darlington nurses. The problem is that a lot of organisations are just imposing all sorts of mad things. People are having to go to court, go to tribunals. That is not fair. The case of Olivia is slightly different. This was something that Parliament voted for. Anything to do with abortion, Parliament makes a free vote. I think I voted against that particular regulation. But when Parliament votes, that is our law. That doesn't mean that we don't have free speech. I think it's probably on the wrong side of individual rights. But I also do understand that when it comes to sensitive issues like abortion, we need to make sure that people aren't harassed or people aren't undergoing something stressful.
Quite a way away.
It's not exactly. So what we're not saying is that we want protesters outside abortion clinics shouting at people, but let's try and get the balance right.
And how about Lucy Connolly? This is the lady who has been in prison because of the post on X about the Southport riots. She pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred. She certainly shouldn't have posted that on X. Should she still be in prison?
Well, this is one of the things that I have asked the Shadow Justice team to look at. Rob Jenrick, Kieran Mullen, I said sentencing is a problem in our country. Many people are complaining. It's not just people like Lucy who people believe are getting unfair sentences. It's also the unduly lenient sentences. People who should be getting whole life terms who aren't getting whole life terms. I had a roundtable with people like Sarah Everard's parents and many others about how we are sentencing. Something's gone wrong with it. And I think that Lucy Connolly should probably appeal her case. I think that there are grounds to do so. It looks like in the aftermath of Southport that a lot of decisions were rushed. I remember Keir Starmer almost implying that he knew who was guilty and who wasn't before we'd come to the conclusions of the case. I don't think that the government got the response to Southport right. People should feel free to say what they are concerned about. They shouldn't cross the line, but then we also shouldn't have these huge sentences for smaller offences and then other people who do serious things getting away with it.
I mean, the counter-argument to that will be Chris Grayling's reforms absolutely shafted the prison service. You had loads of retired officers leaving. We've now got less space. You're calling for longer sentences. There simply isn't room. The Tories should have built more prisons.
Yes, we should.
Just heard from Baroness Newlove. The whole criminal justice system is in disarray post-COVID.
Absolutely, we should have built more. COVID stopped the biggest prison building programme that was ever going to happen. And that is a shame. But one of the things I'm telling people now is that the Conservative Party is under new leadership. I can't fix what Chris Grayling did before I became an MP, which was what those reforms were. I'm the leader now. What are we going to do now? And that is why I have asked Rob Jenrick, for example, to go out and fight all the battles on two-tier sentencing council, all of that.
Is that a problem for you? Because lots of people are saying Rob Jenrick is the leader of the opposition, not Kemi Badenoch. He's moved the dial on the sentencing council's decision. They've reversed it.
But these are things which he and I discuss, and I say go for hell for leather. Make sure you do that.
I know, but he's breathing down your neck, isn't he? company.
I disagree. People are not used to seeing teamwork. They're used to seeing it is. I have a fantastic shadow education secretary. She's got Labour to make a U-turn on their schools bill. Priti Patel is doing a great job fighting the Chagos deal. That's what it should look like.
But do you think Robert Jenrick is cutting through better than you are?
There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues around justice. He is a lawyer. I wanted him to do exactly that. It is not my job to be the shadow justice secretary. It is my job to be the leader of the opposition, to build a team that can man-mark every single person in Labour.
But are you happy with
my
how
job
it's
is
going?
to focus on Keir Starmer.
Because your performance at PMQs has also been criticised.
People will always criticise performance at PMQs. They criticise Keir Starmer's performance in PMQs. They criticise Boris Johnson's performance at PMQs. What I'm here to do is talk about what Labour is doing to our country. Every PMQs, I talk about the jobs tax that's coming in today. It's going to impact people's lives. Their businesses are closing. Their jobs are going. We're getting poorer. Inflation is up. Growth is down. Taxes are up. That's why we're worried about tariffs. That's what I'm doing. It is my job to talk about everything and to show people the damage Labour is doing to our economy.
On the adolescence row, I mean, it's become a meme, really, this idea that you haven't watched the show. You actually said, I think Islamic extremism is more of a threat than the incel movement, particularly to radicalising young people, but also the British public. Can I ask you something? Because it came up on the show in February. We had a guy called Amjad Tatar on who was saying that there is more extremism in the UK than in the Middle East at times. And he made the point, why didn't the Tories proscribe the Muslim Brotherhood? If you're serious about Islamic extremism, wouldn't you do that? This is an organisation that's not allowed to exist in countries like the UAE, Egypt, and, I couldn't believe this when I read it this morning, Syria. Why are they operating in the UK?
Well, this is one of the things which creates that tension. We were talking about freedom of speech earlier, and this is one of the areas where we try and make sure that we have one rule for everyone else. But people exploit many of our laws. I know that there have been many issues around the Muslim Brotherhood. We have taken action.
We should prescribe them, shouldn't we?
But I have not seen the decisions on why they were or were not prescribed.
Well, David Cameron was going to and then shied back from it during his administration.
Right.
I'm asking you, if you're serious about cracking down on Islamic extremism, surely under a Kemi Badenoch government, the Muslim Brotherhood should be prescribed.
There should, any organisation that is a threat to this country, that is promoting sectarian interests and is inciting hatred and so much more, should be prescribed.
So you're saying yes to the Muslim Brotherhood?
What I'm not doing is, without having the facts and looking at a case, just saying yes. You know I don't just make announcements on TV.
What's your instinct on it? It seems nuts that the Muslim Brotherhood could exist in the UK, but not in Syria because they're deemed too dangerous.
I don't know whether the manifestation of it in Syria is the same as here, but they have more draconian laws there. They execute people there. We don't. So let's look at what's actually happening. It is not an organisation that I believe that has the interests of the UK. But before we prescribe, let's look at what's gone wrong. Why didn't it happen before? There must have been reasons. I'm not aware of what those reasons were. There were other organisations we did prescribe, like Hamas, for example, despite a lot of opposition. So we prescribed lots of organisations. I'm not specifically sure why the manifestation of the Muslim Brotherhood didn't. I'm sure there were good reasons. But we are against any sort of organisation that is undermining the values of our country.
OK, final question, just on the locals. 973 seats won by the Tories in 2019. How many are you going to lose?
I'm not going to play guess the number.
Go on.
The result in 2020...
200, 300, 400,
the result we got in 2021, which is the last time we fought those seats, was unprecedented. We won 2/3 of the seats. Well, no party has ever done that before.
You're predicted to lose more than half.
So no party has ever done that before. We have now had a historic defeat. We are lower in the polls than we've ever been. And that means that it's going to be very challenging.
All right.
But our local councillors are working very hard, and we're pointing to the fact that you look at Labour in Birmingham, where there's rubbish piled up in the streets, rats running around. That's what you get if you don't vote Conservatives. We deliver lower taxes and better services across the board. We beat all the other parties on that.
Kemi Badenoch, we need to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining me in the studio this morning.
Thank you, Camilla.
Lovely to see you.